Welcome back to the second episode, Debunking the Myths of Wine. Now, if you remember in our first episode, we looked at wine faults. We looked at corked wine, we looked at Brettanomyces, other things like that. And you can find that here if you're looking to debunk those myths. Today, we will be looking at winemaking and winemaking words. So let's get started. First up, the word that's most important in winemaking, fermentation. What is fermentation? Quite simply, it's the change of sugar to alcohol by the addition of yeast. A secondary byproduct, CO2, we'll talk about that more later on. Now, yeast is a very interesting topic as well. Because everyone just thinks there's a yeast you pop in, but no, there's lots of different styles. Simply put, you have man-made yeasts, which are used more for commercial winemaking, which will allow us to control the process much more and achieve a flavour that we want in the wine. Or there's natural yeast, which is favoured in smaller boutique production, where actually we're looking for the flavour of where those grapes are from. And natural yeast, these occur on the skins of the grapes in the vineyard. We don't add anything else to them when they go into tank for the fermentation. We just let those yeast do their thing. Each one has their benefits. Each one has their negatives. The benefits of man-made, control. Think about mass winemaking. You don't want to have anything wrong happen in fermentation. This controls that. However, what it does do is it gives you a homogenized taste most of the time. It creates a flavor profile that doesn't really change. Pinot Noir with man-made yeast in will taste like Pinot Noir in France or Australia, generally speaking. Natural yeast is the opposite. Natural yeast allows such variety in flavor, such change in location, in terroir, that it really expresses where that grape is from. However, they're really hard to control. And 1 time out of 5, you might not even get a fermentation start. It's a case of put it in the tank, cross your fingers, and hope and pray. Next up, we're looking at crushing of grapes. What does crushing mean? Crushing simply is the process where we take the whole grapes from the vineyard, we gently press them, so we break the skins down and we take all that juice out, and we put that juice into a fermentation vessel, be it a barrel or a stainless steel tank. However, not every vineyard or winery crushes the grapes. Some like to whole bunch ferment. So why do they do this? Quite simply, it's a different form of fermentation, which we've previously spoke about. This is carbonic fermentation. It's where everything ferments from the inside out instead of the outside in. Carbonic fermentation is very desirable in places like Beaujolais, where we make beautiful, beautiful wines from the Gamay grape. The flavor profile changes here by allowing the grapes to ferment from the inside out, giving us more soft, stewed fruit. It's like candied fruit flavors. Absolutely delicious. And remember, 3rd Thursday of every November, Beaujolais Nouveau Day. Really important day of the diary. Fantastic wines arrive. The first wines of the 2020 France growing season. So try and get hold of some if you can. Skins and extraction. Next up, really important topic. So skins are where we get all the colour from. So naturally, in red wine, we put the skins in with the juice. If you break a berry open and look at the flesh inside and squeeze it and get the juice out, 99% of the time, that is clear. There are a couple of berries where there is actually red juice inside, but most of them are clear. So the only place we can get colour from is the skins. Now, skins also give us tannin. So the thicker the skins, and each grape has a different thickness of skin, Pinot Noir very thin, Merlot quite thick. The thicker the skins, the more tannin we'll get coming out and the more colour. And this makes sense. If you think about Pinot Noir, think about Gamay, it tends to be quite light in colour, not much tannin on the palate. If you think about Merlots and Cabernets, which have got thicker skins, they're darker, they're deeper colour, and they're also much more tannic. Skins are very important. Now, white wine tends not to have any skin contact. We don't want the tannin, we want the freshness and the zippiness. However, there's a movement, as I'm sure you've probably heard, about orange wines. Orange wines are those that have seen skin contact. All the skins of white grapes has pigment in it, colour. So if we lay these skins on top of the juice in fermentation, we will get out some of that colour, and that's where this lovely orange colour comes from, or deeper, richer texture comes from. Skins are really important. It also adds texture to the wine, absolutely. Fining and filtering, two very important but misunderstood processes in winemaking. And really important in the world of organics, biodynamics, and natural. So fining is the process by which we make really clear, vibrant wine. Desirable in commercial winemaking because we don't want to have anything else in there that people might say, ooh, it's a bit cloudy, it's a bit weird. You want it clear. And we fine by adding products in to the tanks. Things like isinglass, things like egg whites. So we have to be very careful when we're looking at wines that when we talk about vegetarian and vegan, we have to look at what they've been fined with. Now most organic natural wines don't fine. They believe in allowing the wine to be in its natural state. And actually quite often by not fining, you get more texture on the palate. So if you see a hazy wine, a slightly murky wine, you can tell it's not been fined. Filtering sounds like it should do the same thing as fining, but it doesn't. Filtering is more about cleaning the wine of dangerous microbes that can spoil it. Now, if you want to learn more about wine faults, we have another debunking video on that, as previously mentioned. Fining and filtering, very important. We cannot change the flavour of wine. We can't add flavour into it, we can't take flavour away. What we can do is we can use barrels. And this is the only way that we can actually, through the winemaking process, alter the flavour of a wine. There are generally two different types of barrel we use. We use American oak and we use European oak. Sometimes we use chestnut and other things, but commonly American oak, European oak. European tends to be French oak or Slovenian oak. And American oak tends to come down from Kentucky. All three quite different. We'll look at American oak first. American oak is an oak that has slightly more open grain. Very important because it allows more ingress into the oak of the wine. So the wine goes into the oak more and comes out, which allows it to impart more flavour. French oak, really tight knit grain, so we don't get as much ingress into the oak and therefore don't get as much flavour coming out. Conversely, American oak allows more oxygen in, French oak not so much oxygen in. So we use the different oaks in different circumstances. If we want a wine to become more richer, rounded quicker, you tend to use American oak. It also is suited to the bigger, more fuller styles and climates. French oak, much more delicate, much more fine, great for the likes of Burgundy, Chablis. Some of the flavours of American oak and French oak are vanilla, spices, dried fruits, toastiness. These are the flavors that we get out of the oak. And these are when we taste the wine, the flavors we taste, we know it's been oaked if we taste these. There are three major wine categories: still, sparkling, and fortified. We'll deal with fortified later. We've dealt with still already. Let's look at sparkling. Within sparkling, there are three subsections I want to talk about. Method traditional, as is made in Champagne and Crémant. Tank method, which is very famous in Prosecco. And then the new kid on the block, PET-NATs, my favorite, really exciting wine styles. So let's go have a look at them. Champagne, or traditional method, Methode Champenoise, is the most historic of methods. It's where we take a wine, we ferment it first time in a tank, so we have the alcohol produced and the CO2 escapes. We then take that alcoholic fermentation, we put it in a bottle, we add some more sugar, we add some more yeast, and we cap it off. As this bottle lies in the cellar, over time, the yeast eats the sugars and creates more alcohol in here. It also then produces CO2. Now that CO2 can't go anywhere because the cap is on, and that's where the bubbles come from. Traditional method, or Methode Champenoise, the second fermentation takes place in a sealed bottle where CO2 cannot escape and produces much finer, more elegant bubbles, which gives it its trademark pop. The second method is tank method. Now this is much more cost effective, but doesn't necessarily make worse wines. What happens is we make the wine as before, the first wine as before. We ferment the juice, alcohol is produced, CO2 escapes. But instead of putting it in the bottle and sealing it, we take that and we put it into a sealed tank, add more sugar, add more yeast, and allow that second fermentation to take place in the tank. So we have a much bigger volume of fizzy wine. When we then need it, we take it off into a bottle like this Ruggieri Prosecco DOCG, and we cap it with the fizz already in there. Which means, unlike champagne, which can take years to make, Prosecco can be made in a matter of days and shipped. Now I said Prosecco isn't necessarily worse. It's just different. It's lighter. The bubbles are slightly softer, so it's not as intense. And let's be honest, who doesn't love a cold bottle of Prosecco on a warm summer's day? It just slips down a treat. The third method is the method that is really springing up, the PET-NATs, or Methode Ancestrale, as you may see it on bottles. PET-NATs are the most natural of wine making techniques. Why? Because we start the fermentation in tank, but then we put it straight in the bottle while it's still fermenting, and we cap it. So what this means is it's the most minimal intervention fizzy wine, sparkling wine process. They tend to be a little bit more fruit forward, again, softer bubbles, lower alcohol content, and very importantly, with little or no human interaction. That's the PET-NATs, and you really are seeing a rise in popularity of these wines. Those are three sparkling wine methods that we champion here at Good Brothers. All of these wines are available on our website, which you can find below. Thank you for watching. I've been Graham Sutherland. This is the Good Brothers YouTube channel. Remember, if nothing else, drink better wine. Take care.